Welcome back to the Snowpoint Cast. Today we're going to be going over a deck from 2004 called Gardevoir. So Gardevoir actually did pretty well at the World Championships in 2004. It got a second place finish in the Seniors Division, as well as 2 top 16 finishes in the Masters Division. Definitely a super powerful archetype that can get a little bit out of control if you give it too many turns to do that. But let's get right into it. So starting off with 4 Ralts. Ralts has got 50 HP, Psychic type, single retreat, and a weakness to Psychic. So first attack for a colorless, Hypnosis. The defending Pokemon is now asleep. Definitely a decent stall tactic, especially for a colorless. You do play some lightning energy in the deck, so being able to always hit this is pretty good, and it's just good to potentially put your opponent at a 50-50 that they don't do anything next turn unless they have a switch out. And then Psychic Boom is the attack. For 1 Psychic, does 10 damage times the amount of energy attached to the defending Pokemon. So kind of cool in the mirror. Can be decent in the mirror, but other than that, not an amazing attack. Okay, you also play 2 Kirlia, just to keep that Gardevoir line consistent. 70 HP, Psychic type, single retreat, and a weakness to Psychic. Removal Beam for 1 Psychic. Flip a coin. If heads, discard 1 energy attached to the defending Pokemon. This is actually really good. It does 10 damage as well, so being able to just deny your opponent that attach, especially if it's like a significant attach, like a double rainbow or something like that, being able to discard that is pretty good. So removal beam is really solid. And then Super Psy for 1 Psychic, 2 colorless, it does 50, which is some decent damage as well. If you can hit that for weakness, it's not an awful attack. But you play those to play Gardevoir. So this is one of 2 Gardevoir you play in this line. So this is the non-EX one. It's got 100 HP, 2 retreat, maintains that weakness to Psychic, and it has a really powerful ability. So Psy Shadow says, once during your turn, before you attack, you may search your deck for a Psychic energy card and attach it to one of your Pokemon. Put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon, and then you shuffle your deck. So it just helps you accelerate those energy, and energy acceleration rather is super powerful in this deck just because of the attacks that these Gardevoir have. So this one has an attack called Energy Burst, does 10 times the amount of energy attached to Gardevoir and the defending Pokemon. So it's kind of reminiscent of Mewtwo's X-Ball. I guess Mewtwo's X-Ball is kind of reminiscent of this, but it just does damage based off the energy on both of the active Pokemon, which is pretty good. And then you also play this Gardevoir, so the Gardevoir EX, which is the Mega Powerhouse. So 150 HP, Psychic type, 2 retreat, and a double weakness to both Psychic and Grass. I guess that's to like Bug. So the first attack is called Feedback. For Psychic under colors, count the number of cards in your opponent's hand, put that many damage counters on the defending Pokemon. So this attack is actually really powerful. Within this meta, with just Delcatty and Steven's Advice being really powerful cards, oftentimes people's hand sizes they kind of get out of control. They kind of get really big. So being able to feedback and just drop a ton of damage on your opponent, if they're not keeping track of their hand size, is really good. And it kind of forces them to mitigate the resources that they have in their hand, which is kind of a cool part of that attack. And then the second attack, Psystorm. So for 1 Psychic and 3 colorless, it does 10 times the amount of total energy attached to all Pokemon in play. So it's kind of one of the cool things about this Gardevoir. You can Psy Shadow. You don't have to drop the energy on this Gardevoir. You can drop it on some other stuff, maybe the bench Gardevoir or some of your support Pokemon, just so you have that energy in play. It doesn't have to be on anything. And then you don't have to worry about the damage on your attackers if you don't want to. So another cool part about Psystorm as well is the colorless cost on the attack. So for 3 colorless, that can be fulfilled by a boost energy, which also is like, it just does a lot for the deck as well. When you put a boost on, you're doing 30 more damage, so it's like a 30 damage buff, which is really solid, and it just lets you hit this on turn 2 potentially for a fat 40 damage, which isn't a lot, but I mean, I guess you can still use it on turn 2. Okay, so getting into some of the support Pokemon, you're going to be playing 4 Dunsparce. Dunsparce is staple to set up in this format, really good. So 50 HP, colorless, single retreat, and a weakness to fighting. Strike and Run is the first attack. Search your deck for up to 3 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. Shuffle your deck afterward. You may switch Dunsparce with one of your bench Pokemon. So that's great to set up. I mean, usually you're going to be finding a Skitty, Ralts, and something else with this. Maybe a Magnemite, maybe another tech support Pokemon if that's what you need. But the other attack on Dunsparce is actually really good as well. Don't underestimate this attack. It's actually really useful in a lot of situations. So Sudden Flash, 1 for 10, flip a coin. If heads, the defending Pokemon is now paralyzed. So this is kind of an interesting thing that I think a lot of people in 2004, I'm just going to talk on this Dunsparce for just a second. I think a lot of people in 2004 might be misplaying when they use this card sometimes, because oftentimes I find when I'm attacking with a Dunsparce, like people will strike and run and then they'll just switch to the bench Pokemon and go into their attackers right away, which is okay in some situations. It's definitely there is a right time to do that for sure. But in other situations, using strike and run to set up and then not switching, and then just using sudden flash to stall your opponent's board while you set up. In a deck like Krobus, where you just want to find a ton of energy and so you can swing with Gorbis for a lot of damage, sudden flash can be really good like that and useful like that. And same with Gardevoir EX, right? Like you just want to get a ton of energy on your board. And if you don't really have the knockout yet, putting your main attacker in the active just so it can be in the position to take damage sometimes might not be the best call. So especially when you can do the chip damage with sudden flash, just be aware of that attack because it's a really powerful attack in this deck as well. So you're also playing a 1-1 split on your Skitty. Minor errand writing is just because finding energies is really good in this deck. You want to find as many energies as you can, as fast as you can. And then this Skitty is kind of just so you have that additional buff of HP. I guess Lullaby on this Skitty we'll talk about for a second as well. It does 10, and then the defending Pokemon is now asleep. You know, same single retreat, weakness to fighting. But then this one has 50 HP, single retreat, weakness to fighting still, energy catch. For 1, search your discard pile for a basic energy card, show it to your opponent, put it in your hand. Pretty bad attack, but you mainly just play this one for the HP because Ancient Technical Machine Rock is definitely a threat in this format, and I think playing a split is just really good to be aware of that threat. You play those for Delcatty. So Delcatties are amazing support Pokemon in this format. 70 HP, single retreat cost, maintains that weakness to fighting. Energy draw, so once during your turn, before you attack, you can discard an energy card from your hand, and then you draw up to 3 cards. So just great draw, and being able to find those energies in the discard is not that big of a deal because you do play Magneton as well. And I will talk about Delcatty's attack as well because it can be okay in this deck. So for 1 colorless, you do 10 times the amount of energy attached to all your active Pokemon. So very confusing wording on the attack. Meant for double battles. So it's not for your opponent's active Pokemon either. But, you know, if you have an energy on there and then you have double Psy Shadow with Gardevoir and a boost energy, you can swing for like 60. So having that option available to you, just knowing that you have that option to attack with a single prizer if you need to, can be really good to force your opponent into a 7-prize game, depending on what the board looks like. You do play 2 Magnemite as well, a Magnemite. So 50 HP, lightning type, single retreat, and a weakness to fighting. Lots of stuff's weak to fighting in this deck, but the nice part about that is Gardevoir is a psychic type, so it kind of counters that weakness to fighting that you have on your support Pokemon. So flip a coin for 1 lightning, flip a coin if heads, the defending Pokemon is now paralyzed. Just great to have a paralyzed attack on a basic. You do play lightning energy as well because the Magneton's attack is also pretty decent, but we'll talk about that right now. So Magneton got 70 HP, lightning type, single retreat, gets a resistance to metal, which is not amazing in this format, not many powerful metal types, and then has that weakness to fighting still. Magnetic Field essentially says before you attack, you can discard a card from your hand and then search your discard pile for up to 2 basic energy cards, and then you put them into your hand. So it just kind of keeps that cycle going. Delcatty and Magneton are just really, they have a lot of synergy with one another because you discard the energy, you get it back, and then you're never going to be running out of energy, which is kind of the worry with Delcatty. And then Magnetic Force, which is the attack on Magneton, is also really powerful. So for lightning colorless, does 10 damage times the amount of energy attached to all of your Pokemon. So it does the same as Psystorm, which is like really good. I mean, Gardevoir EX, it does it for 4, which is a lot more energy, and also you're able to hit it for the lightning typing, which is really cool as well. There are some Pokemon in this format that are weak to lightning, so being able to hit not only because you just have synergy, right? You just want to have a lot of energy on the board, but also being able to hit for an alternate typing with Magneton is something really good to keep in mind because sometimes you do need to do that. Okay, and then you also play a 1-1 blossomline. So starting with the Oddish, 50 HP for a colorless. It does poison powder. Flip a coin if heads, the defending Pokemon is now poisoned. You know, just decent damage, and putting a special condition on your opponent's active can be decent as well. And then for grass, Razor Leaf. You don't play grass, so don't worry about that. But the Belossom is mainly a Desert Ruins counter. So Desert Ruins is a really powerful stadium that does a lot of work against EX Pokemon. You can't really afford to just be taking hits every turn from Desert Ruins. So Belossom is the counter to that. Heal Dance, or let's go over the HP and stats first. So 100 HP, grass type, 2 retreat, resistance to water, and a weakness to fire. So Heal Dance, essentially you can heal 20 from one of your Pokemon every turn, which is really clutch because that's the Desert Ruin damage. You know, it does 10 in between turns. But with the Belossom, it kind of just cancels that out. So that's kind of clutch too. And you don't play grass energy, so I'm not going to talk about the attacks on that card. Hey, getting into some of the trainer cards now. Whoa. Playing 4 rare candy obviously makes a lot of sense. You're playing multiple stage 2 lines, and you just want to find your Gardevoirs as soon as you can. So being able to find those rare candies is really powerful. You can essentially, what it does is it lets you skip the Kirlia, or if you want, you can go like Skitty, rare candy, Delcatty. There are some situations where that's okay as well if you're gonna get donked. you also play one friend ball. So you play a lot of different types of Pokemon, you know, Psychic, Normal, Lightning, Grass. And there's a lot of those Pokemon in the format as well, especially Normal type. There's a lot of Normal type Pokemon. So being able to find your Dunsparce and Delcatty lines just keeps you a little bit consistent. But there are some other Psychic types and Grass types as well. So it just kind of keeps you a little bit more consistent on that Pokemon search front. You also play 2 Magnetic Storm. So Magnetic Storm, I think, is a really important supporter card in this era of 2004, just because this is mainly attack against Shiftry. Because if you don't play this card, I think you just bare bones lose to Shiftry. If not, it's a really bad matchup. So Magnetic Storm says any damage done by attacks from Psychic Pokemon and Fighting Pokemon is not affected by resistance. So in this format, resistance is -30. That's a pretty big deal if you're getting -30 damage every turn, and it just makes the pacing versus Shiftry really, really hard. So being able to play a 2-of Stadium that keeps you in the matchup, I think, is definitely worth it. Okay, now getting into some of these supporter cards, you're going to be playing 4 Steven's Advice. Steven's Advice is a baller card, amazing supporter card in this format. Draw a number of cards equal to the number of your opponent's Pokemon in play. If you have more than 7 cards in your hand, including this one, you can't play this card. So that was like a errata past 2004 during the tournament. You actually could play it if it was a 7th card in your hand, but they errated it after. But just solid draw, right? Like with Dunsparce, if your opponent goes with a Dunsparce and they strike and run and fight a bunch of Pokemon, all of a sudden you're you're Stevensing for like 4 cards, which is pretty good. If you can net 4 off of Stevens, that's pretty valuable for sure. Okay, you also play 4 Copycat, because Copycat is also a really good card. So shuffle your hand to your deck and then count the number of cards in your opponent's hand and draw that many cards. So like I was saying before with the Delcatty and Steven's Advice, your opponent often has a lot of cards in their hand. So being able to shuffle your hand in and then draw those cards that your opponent has, you know, if they have 10 or 11 cards, being able to shuffle draw 10 or 11 can be that big board boost that you need. And this deck can really pop off too, because all of a sudden, if you get, you know, double Rare Candy, double Psyshadow Gardevoir, you're just accelerating 2 energy from deck a turn, which turns your pacing on fire. Like your energy pacing just gets a little bit out of control, and if your opponent doesn't have an answer, you can just kind of wipe the board with them pretty quick. So Copycat, really good pacing card for sure. And you also play 3 Oracle. The Oracle is a solid combo card. It just lets you hit your combos. So it says choose 2 cards from your deck and then shuffle the rest of your deck. Put those cards on top of your deck in any order. So Oracle has a lot of synergy with Delcatty, because you can just Oracle for 2 cards, energy draw, discard an energy, and then draw those 2 cards and an additional card. So let's say you need to find Candy Gardevoir, you can just hit that. Let's say you need to hit a Magneton and like a Belossom, you can do that. It just lets you find the missing pieces in your hand and lets you be a little bit more consistent with that Delcatty. So let me do 2 Professor Elm's training method. So Elm's training method says search your deck for an evolution card, show it to your opponent, and put it in your hand. So that's mainly to find your Gardevoir EXs and Gardevoirs, but it also helps you find the Delcattys, Magnetons, and Belossom as well. It's just important to find your evolution cards, and that's one of the things that you can't really search out in this deck. You have to raw draw, other than Professor Elm's training method, which helps you keep a little bit more consistent. Then you also play 2 Desert Shaman. So I think Desert Shaman is another pretty good card in 2004 that people have kind of, you know, they haven't been underestimating. There's definitely some really good lists that have come out with lots of Desert Shaman, but I think it's one of those cards that people think is okay as a 1-of, and I think it's kind of going towards being better as a 2-of, just because, like I was saying, the hand size can get so out of control, and if you just let your opponent have that massive hand, they can kind of overwhelm you at some points. But when you have that option to just Desert Shaman, especially when it doesn't really hurt you, right? Like Psyshadow searches energy from deck, so it's not really that big of a deal. Sometimes it's actually beneficial to shuffle your hand into your deck, because you can get the energy back with Magneton, shuffle it back with Desert Shaman, and then you have access to Psyshadow, which you might not if you don't have any more psychic energy in deck. So kind of a cool use for Desert Shaman there, and it's also just a really good hand disruption card in this deck. Okay, so getting into the energy line, we're going to be playing 7 Psychic. Just makes sense, you know, you have a lot of Psychic. And with the Magneton and Delcatty, you don't really need many more than that. You know, Psyshadow is a really powerful ability, but so are Energy Draw and Magnetic Field. So honestly, 7 is a pretty good number, especially when you're playing other energy in this deck as well. You're also playing 4 Boost Energy. So like I was saying, it's really good on Gardevoir EX, but it also just lets you have 3 more energy on the board, so you're doing 30 more damage. So that's really solid as well. But yeah, just an overall really powerful card. And then you also play, so I'll explain it, I guess. So Boost Energy, it does 3, it's 3 energy at once, and then you have to discard it at the end of your turn, but still worth it. Really, really powerful buff there for sure. And then you also play 2 lightning energy. So like I said, attacking with that Magneton is really good. Solid option to have, but other than that, that's kind of the only reason you play lightning, is just so you can attack with a Magneton. As soon as you discard it with a Delcatty, you kind of have access to it with the Magneton at whatever point in the game. So yeah, this has been Gardevoir from 2004. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get to them. And if you're not subscribed, definitely hit a sub, because we're doing a giveaway at 500 subs. I did leak that there is a World Championship sleeve pack going to be in there, so some year of World Championship sleeves, as well as I'm going to leak something else today. There's also a pin that is in this prize pack, as well as like 4 or 5 other things. So it's a big prize pack. Definitely leave a sub if you're not subscribed. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.